Hey guys, welcome to Solo React Talk. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video requested by two people, Samithon James and Michael James. Yes, I think this is just a coincidence that they both have the last name James. Yeah, I've been requested to react to Alpha Protocol 10 years later, made on the YouTube channel Raycevick. Yes, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The YouTube channel name Raycevick. If you guys want to check out the original video as well as Raycevick's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. And yes, let us start. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, sorry about that. By 2006, the general public's fascination with espionage became an obsession. Jack Bauer, Jason Bourne, James Bond, and many, many more were rolling in profits during this peak of popularity.
Really? I would have never noticed. I would have never noticed that because I don't really have an interest in like spy movies and spy TV series. Maybe 007, yes, I've dabbled into it maybe once or twice, but honestly, I just never really had that affinity or that connection with espionage type of movies. Yeah. But yeah, it's quite a surprise that, in America and probably across the world, there was a grip, there was a hold on the entertainment industry in terms of espionage-themed movies and TV series. I wasn't in that loop, really. I was in the sci-fi loop. That's where I've always been. That's where I've always been be for the rest of my life, in the sci-fi genre of TV series and movies. But espionage, nah. Just like war movies, I'm not really much of a fan of such things. I do like romantic dramas and romantic movies. I'm digressing. I'm sorry. Let's continue.
It's easy to see why. The mixture of action, suspense, and romance proved to appeal to just about anyone, including one Obsidian Entertainment, who had an idea. Turn this power fantasy of being somewhere you shouldn't be, doing something you shouldn't be doing with someone you shouldn't know, into a role-playing video game. Something nobody had done in the industry's 40-year history.
Really? No one has created a spy espionage type themed game? Wow. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I don't think. Wow. Okay.
There'd been licensed shooters, action, and stealth games, but few original properties with this theme. The makers of Knights of the Old Republic 2 and Neverwinter Nights 2 would go from retooling the works of others to venturing uncharted land that would capitalize off the espionage boom. And it was a disaster.
How does it feel to treat me like you do? When you've laid your hands upon me and show me who you are.
Everybody wants what they don't have. And Microsoft had relentlessly pursued Japan since releasing the original Xbox, with one of their biggest contributors being Sega. But after surviving a tumultuous transition from console manufacturer to gaming publisher, Sega conducted a Western invasion. releasing Condemned Criminal Origins and Full Auto before acquiring Creative Assembly and contacting Obsidian Entertainment. This was before the 2008 financial crash and the multiplayer military shooter craze. Niche genres like RTSs, RPGs, horror, and arcade racers were taken more seriously in this era, and it was Sega's strategy to secure their place in all of them. History would prove just 2 of those genre efforts survived, as did one franchise. But at the time, Sega wanted an RPG in their portfolio so badly they didn't even care what world it took place in. Seizing an opportunity, Obsidian's pitch for an espionage RPG was uncommonly brief, mostly describing narrative concepts rather than a particular game mechanic.
This is an issue right here. You know, Sega just throwing money at anyone who has a plan. I mean, shouldn't they be going through some sort of like a due diligence to just understand what is it that they want? Why do they want it? How much are they prepared to spend? Why are they prepared to spend so much? Who is or what is the company that is pitching this idea for an RPG? Are they really capable of doing it? You know, do they have the capacity, the experience to do it? And why should we choose you as the development company to make this game? You know, and what is going to be the storyline behind this RPG? Why is it centered around this? Why are you making it in this fashion? You know, questions. Don't just throw money at don't just throw money at this and think that everything's going to be all right. You know. So yeah, I think what Sega's doing here is just they're gambling. They are gambling. And let's see if it succeeded. Well, we've just been told that it was a failure, but yeah.
But Sega still liked it enough to hand them a 2.5-year development contract, and
2. Okay.
Would go on to set up another deal with Obsidian for an Aliens RPG. Having rushed their last 2 projects and just canceled a Disney-commissioned Seven Dwarfs RPG, this was the most enticing and exciting opportunity in Obsidian's history up to this point, forging something completely original with the time and resources their ambitions demanded.
But 2 years? Is it possible in 2 years? I don't think I've ever heard of a game development process having only 2 years and it comes out nowadays.
Today, Unreal Engine is one of the most iconic gaming tools out there, powering many of the world's most successful, beautiful, and independent games. It's used on The Mandalorian set, Block Pawn's official racing simulation, Ninja Theory's most ambitious title, and so much more. But in 2006, it was mostly known for this. However, being spring rather than fall, it wasn't the release of Gears of War, but the pedigree of Unreal Tournament, success of Unreal Engine 2, and UE3's console optimization that inspired Obsidian to build their latest games with it. Being that whatever the RPG developers released, it was going to contain third-person action elements. So it seemed perfectly sensible to power Alpha Protocol with it. Now, the majority of this development story pieced together is largely thanks to Eurogamer's quality article released in 2017, detailing events that otherwise never would have been brought to the public eye. I reached out to various people, one of which, Matthew Rory, boss of bosses, was kind enough to take time answering some questions. But most of the information you're about to hear is credited to Eurogamer's journalism, not mine. The 2.5-year development contract Obsidian signed was obviously extended. Unlike the studio's previous games, which were famously rushed to market, Alpha Protocol took its time, making its unfinished state all the more puzzling. Especially when you dig up the oldest gameplay footage we have access to, and find the majority of levels, dialogue sequences, and mechanics presented are in the final product virtually unchanged. But word has it, prior to the game's announcement in 2008, next to nothing resembled the release. While Alpha Protocol plasters the espionage RPG everywhere, early builds more resembled the shooters that personified Unreal Engine 3. Eurogamer describes a set piece not unlike these games, where the player fights an opponent in hand-to-hand combat on an airliner, eventually stealing said enemy's parachute to escape. Sound director Alexander Brandon describes the scene too, even retooling a demo song by Red Note Audio to match the cinematic. Obsidian spent $500,000 and a year and a half of development time on just this set piece in an RPG destined to have dozens over the course of dozens of hours.
500,000. 500,000. If I was part of the Sega management, those who are giving these guys money, I'm going to be in those board meetings and I'm going to be asking, what are you people doing with $500,000? Show me what have you done with that money? Because I can't believe that just for that small segment, 500,000. Guys, that's a lot of money, okay? That is a lot of money. It's a lot. I want it in detail. Where are you spending this money? Where is it going? Why is it going there? Hey, but Sega seems to trust them. They've extended the contract and it seems like they're prepared to give them more money. So, yeah. Wow.
This wasn't sustainable. Just like some previous games I've covered, development suffered from tunnel vision, being so dedicated to an ideal for the game without stopping to consider what that vision actually entailed, and if it was even possible. That uncommonly brief pitch really came to bite Obsidian's backside, as it meant not even the people who pitched the project truly understood what it was, and meandered, in the words of the company's CEO with Kotaku.
They didn't know what they were doing here. They didn't understand the type of game they wanted. Whew. And Sega is just throwing money at this when these guys are not even really prepared to implement or to initiate what they've been saying they could do. This is highly questionable here. The actions of these companies. Wow. 500,000, guys. I'm sorry, I can't jump over that. I just can't.
The challenging part of developing Alpha Protocol has been figuring out exactly what we wanted to do with the game and how to focus it on a particular direction. The spy genre is a very wide open one.
The team.
These sort of things should have been discussed a long time ago, At the moment where they would present this idea to Sega, these types of discussions should have been nailed out or hammered out and, have a proper presentation to Sega on the understanding of how they want this game to go about,
Prototyped environmental interactions, parkour mechanics, and on-rail chase sequences. The Russian yacht and agent's bike weren't originally props, but repurposed assets intended for action sequences. I've even seen posts on old Obsidian forum pages of a Vimeo link describing a demo showcasing vehicles and skydiving in-engine. I'd show you the video to verify its authenticity, but... In one sentence, Obsidian's consistent trouble was spending lots of resources with little return. This design approach itself isn't inherently a problem, just the last game I analyzed did that to great effect, spending months scripting stealth AI from the ground up for a single stage. Issues rather stem from when, where, and on what Obsidian did this. An RPG built for players to influence an espionage-ridden world, not merely tour through one, which in this current state, it was. The game didn't even have safe houses or hubs of any kind. Levels were structured one after the other like a linear shooter, and the mini-games that have stopped friends from playing this game used to be worse.
So Alpha Protocol is, you could say it's like a linear type of game where you're just doing your mission, you have your cutscene, you're doing another mission, you're having a cutscene. There's nothing in between after completing the mission and the cutscene, or before the cutscene, then you're in your safe house or something like that where you can recuperate, where you can save the game. Like in Grand Theft Auto, you have a safe house. You go into your safe house, you can watch television, you can store your weapons, you can save the game by heading off to bed. In games like Dragon Age Origins or Inquisition or Dragon Age 2, you have a safe house where after you've done your missions, after you've walked around the city or the forest or wherever you are in, you just go back to your safe house, you save, you talk to people, especially in Origins. You know, you could talk to a lot of people. Like you had a lot of your companions around the campfire where you could talk to them. In Inquisition, you had your castle. You know, you could also talk to people there. You could do things there. What else? There's so many other games where, you know, you will have your missions, and that's important. But then after the mission, you know, you have a time to recuperate and just enjoy the environment that you're in. You know, be a part of it and be a part of this world that you are fighting in. Because then mainly this game is just like Call of Duty, you know, where you have in your mission. After your mission, it's a cinematic. After that cinematic, it's another mission, and so on and so forth until the end of the game. And I thought this was an RPG, not a shooter, you know, runner shooter type of game. So yeah, not really good.
Much worse, taking up to 3 minutes for players to complete. The developers hated it so strongly, removing minigames entirely was seriously considered, but there was a roadblock in the form of a hedgehog owner. Sega wanted minigames, and whether they debated or demanded, their wish was granted, regardless of how Obsidian felt. Not to say that was entirely undeserved, being that Sega were extending Obsidian's deadline and budget after the developer held an internal come-to-Jesus-type meeting. Here, Chris Parker and Chris Avallone were designated as lead producer and lead writer, and with the development team, hacked off the game's excess, throwing out set pieces, bloated mechanics, and shooter aspirations to map a story that played to Obsidian's talents in role-playing, agency, and writing. According to Alexander's article, the story was rewritten almost entirely at this time. Both publisher and developer were far more confident in the game after this took place, but the domino effect ensured things wouldn't be so easy, initiated by the technology licensed. BioWare was widely mocked in 2007 for its
Mass Effect.
pathetic load times in Mass Effect, but
There were not pathetic load times in Mass Effect. You know, it was fine.
with Alpha Protocol being a more ambitious game on the same technology, texture pop-in was just the start of their problems. For one thing, there wasn't a stealth game on the market using Unreal 3 at the time, meaning the first studio to implement one of the most challenging gaming genres, stealth action, as an optional playstyle in a 20-hour game was by people with no experience in action or stealth. They eventually did it, but without.
This kind of reminds me of BioWare and, you know, when they were using the Frostbite engine for their... What was that game called again? I forgot. It was after Mass Effect Andromeda. It was another game. Not centered around Mass Effect, but I forgot what they called it. I forgot. But yeah, they had difficulties with this Frostbite engine, and, you know, they had to, you know, recreate and create new systems and environments centered around this Frostbite engine. And I guess Obsidian is heading down that same path. And yeah, difficult, very difficult.
Proper leadership and wasting over a year on scrap prototypes, those developments took longer than expected, as Obsidian had to build various components from scratch. And efforts weren't always rewarded. For instance, the AI system, said to be complex and cool, was eating up performance across all platforms, and with their new deadline of fall 2009 creeping up, there wasn't time to rebuild, meaning all that could be done to ensure the game's 30 FPS target was to sacrifice the AI's complexity they crafted. The expanded budget was already stretched. Obsidian claimed too the option of a playable female character was sacrificed to save costs. Meanwhile, their Aliens RPG, Crucible, had its own development troubles. It's often said via leaked video the game was ready to ship, but it's explained by various developers this build was only a second vertical slice, not representative of the full game at that time. So by 2009, Sega funded 2 RPGs and a game engine, Obsidian's proprietary Onyx engine for Crucible, announced in 2006, with no product from this 3-year partnership originally contracted for 2.5. Stretched thin, the publisher saw no choice but to abandon one of its children, and not even Obsidian knew where the axe would fall. Hence why it came as a shock to those involved when Sega canceled Aliens Crucible, and laying off 20% of the team's staff. It might seem surprising the license project was pulled rather than the untested IP, until remembering Sega already had an Aliens game in the works and a much more popular genre.
Sega had gotten to a point where they were just tired of dealing with Obsidian. I recall the conversation around 2009-ish was the possibility of eliminating one of the 3 hub locations so that it would be beginning 2 hubs endgame instead, in order to get the game out the door.
Those familiar with Alpha Protocol might shriek at the mere suggestion of removing an entire third of the game, but when looking at the project's scope, it's understandable. All of this? That's just the opening conversation in Russia, and there's 180 of those.
The choices are here, and the reactivity checks are here.
Wow.
This was like 2 months of my fucking life.
12 hours of cinematics were made, despite it only being possible for the player to see 4 hours on a single playthrough, with 16 major characters, not including various NPCs.
I think this game should have had like a part 2. I mean, that's a lot of content there. Yeah, I think they should have cut Alpha Protocol like part 1 and part 2, on 2 different discs or something like that. Yeah.
It's small wonder cutting off one city was considered, but Obsidian's top brass desperately pushed back against it, asking for yet more time. And I've saved the best of this story for last. One of the most common sentiments about this game is if Obsidian just had 6 more months to patch the bugs and iron out its systems, the game could have been an instant classic.
I don't know about 6 more months, maybe another year, maybe another year and a half, maybe.
But Alpha Protocol was delayed by 6 months. How's that possible? The game is buggy, unpolished, and obviously rushed to market. How can that be if Obsidian had 6 extra months to refine it? It's because Alpha Protocol isn't a 2010 game. It's a 2009 game that was shelved. Sega delayed the game by 6 months, a mere week before its original release date in fall 2009, but didn't provide any funding for Obsidian to use polishing the game. Just 10 people were attached to fix bugs until the early calendar year, where it sat until release.
I'm sorry, before we continue, does this character have powers? I just saw in one, part of the image that it looked like he was cloaking, or it looked like he could phase into physical objects. I'm not entirely sure. And then in another part, I saw him, screaming out like he was powering up. And then it looks like he's impervious to gunfire. Okay, so is this like a superhero espionage RPG type of game? Or what exactly? Okay, interesting.
To this day, Obsidian is puzzled by the decision, and Sega has never spoken about it. Obviously, the publisher didn't want to compete against Uncharted 2, Modern Warfare 2, or Mass Effect 2, but was erasing the gold text really the only thing that could be accomplished in those 6 months? If so, then it's why Alpha Protocol released on May 27, 2010, without the critical reception everyone at Obsidian had hoped for. Difficulty modes. They're a gaming staple, yet ignite debate with each From Software release. Because at its core, the conversation is about whether a game's difficulty supports its design. I'd argue that Veteran in Call of Duty 2, where you're just one soldier of many on the field, does, while Veteran in Modern Warfare 2 that often pits you as a one-man army does not. But that's what difficulty modes are for. They're a subtle adjustment to accommodate the unknown variable that is the player, their preferences and experience, though subtle is the key word. When selecting hard in Fallout 3, I don't feel like the very fabric of reality has shifted from normal. But in Alpha Protocol, I do. So bear with me, because it'll take a bit of time to explain why two playthroughs ended up providing such vastly different experiences. Now, regardless of what's selected in difficulty, class, or loadouts, it doesn't take long to see why this game was critically mixed. 4 years of development, multiple delays, and millions of dollars spent for this.
Like, I just saw some dude phase into the wall there. Like, that was, oh my gosh, no. Oh, that was just terrible.
Where are you hiding? Die, motherfucker.
I guess the AI is not really that clever. I mean, he's right there. He's right there. He's shooting at you, but anyways. At least move around. Don't just stay still and get shot in the head. Oh gosh.
Come out, whoever you are.
During RPG's evolution from janky niche to blockbuster, Sega might have shelved Alpha Protocol to avoid competition, but all that really did is put competition into perspective, most obviously in presentation, polish, and accessibility. Where Mass Effect 2 defined its franchise's art style, Alpha Protocol concerned journalists about its lack of one. While Final Fantasy showcased console horsepower, Alpha Protocol barely ran on them. Where Human Revolution's preview appealed to action and RPG fans, Alpha Protocol's final form left both scratching their heads. Which is fascinating because Alpha Protocol was meant to be all of those. Built for 7th gen consoles from the ground up, eschewing top-down cameras and dice rolls for instinctive combat in a cinematic world. Which it sort of does, but breaks even without the player's touch. Sure, you can laugh at Thornton looking like he soiled himself, spin him in circles, or sprint into objects to break the camera. It is telling that walking into the geometry is beyond this game's comprehension, and it's only worse for enemies. I don't know if this game's original AI was as cool as Obsidian say, but if so, then programmers didn't remove with surgical precision, they used a hacksaw.
They needed to make some patches for this game. They needed to make a lot of patches for this game.
I've seen enemies swap animations, stop in their tracks, see you through walls, aim at walls, glitch up walls, phase through me, lose track of me after shooting me, forget about dead allies they ran to investigate, even shoot their own allies unprompted. It's
well, that's kind of believable. You know, that's kind of believable. Sometimes mistakes happen. You shoot your own people by mistake because you're scared, because, you know, you haven't trained with the gun enough, you know. So things happen. So I can believe that.
out of control. There was a gameplay instance so perfect I dreamed up sentences for this video in the midst of it. Broken animations, walking in place, shooting teammates, everything wrong with this game's core loop bundled up into a single encounter set to my hard drive without the storage space to hold it.
Is Alpha Protocol set in the far future? Is that why maybe this character has cloaking technology and is able to, I don't know, like he's using like some sort of super strength or something, super speed? Or yeah. Because it doesn't seem espionage-like, you know, like what's that game called? The guy with the daggers and the hoodie. Hopefully, you guys know what I'm talking about. I just forgot the name of the game right now, but it's set in Venice or something, you know, and you're this Assassin's Creed. Yes, Assassin's Creed. You know, at least with that, you can actually see, you know, they're sticking to this theme of an assassin. someone who has to be out of sight, out of mind, who attacks when necessary, dodges when necessary, climbs up buildings because you have easier access to the various targets that your character has to neutralize. And I'm not really seeing that in this type of espionage RPG type of game, because it really just does look like, you're just banging through the front door, shooting up everybody, and destroying everything, making a loud noise. And spies don't do that. Spies are not loud people. They're not loud soldiers or operatives. Spies work in the shadows. Spies, make things appear. They make things appear the way you would understand it, and think that okay, everything's fine, but in reality, that's not the truth. They are controlling your perception in the background. If you understand what I'm trying to say there. But essentially, spies are not these people who are gun-ho, carrying weaponry, all types of weapons and shooting up everybody. That's not really... I think they're being influenced too much on the movies and the TV series where they see, spies do stuff like that. But it's not really like that when it comes to spies, So I'm not really seeing it. I'm not really seeing this espionage themed part of this RPG game. Yeah. Sorry guys, I went on a very long tangent there, but hopefully you understood what I meant. Okay, let us continue.
That was disheartening, until realizing there's no need to worry, because everything that happened in it would repeat so frequently there's too much footage to compile. Need a clip of takedown animations breaking? The question isn't where is it, but which one to use. There absolutely have been buggier games released before and since, one of them by an Obsidian employer. But like Joseph Anderson described Fallout 76, these bugs became the game. It's thoroughly entertaining to watch the code crumble before your very eyes in every stage. And it's not just the bugs, but the design they're paired with. Jason Bourne didn't freeze time to execute people. James Bond didn't T-pose in gunfights. Jack Bauer didn't literally glow red when punching his victims. Reading the espionage RPG, you don't think throat-punching Ghost.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. It's not giving me this feeling of an espionage RPG type of game, because I'm seeing this character and he's able to do all of these amazing, technological feats, I don't know, and it just doesn't seem like it's very spy-like. Yeah. Because this spy also just looks like a one-man army who's just attacking and killing everything that moves. And yeah, I don't know, guys. I'm just not really convinced about the espionage part of it.
But Michael Thornton does all of this. So when enemies shoot their...
Michael... Wait, let me just write down his name. Michael Thornton. Okay.
teammates beaten up by a blue-tinted ninja, it amplifies the gameplay from absurd to hysterical. I've said before this game would be far less enjoyable without these inconsistencies, and I still believe that. Especially upon realizing how familiar not just its third-person design is, but also its RPG blueprint.
Did that guy just combat roll from that top of at the top of the roof? He just combat rolled and he went down onto the floor. That was amazing. That was amazing.
Michael Thornton is an agent, but to start, is a commando, spy, or engineer, not dissimilar to warrior, rogue, or mage.
Oh, a class system. Okay.
The player is alone, but they collect, buy, and sell various items on markets used to organize and customize the character. The world isn't set in dungeons or space, but you're still fighting various enemy types as a power-based hero. The espionage RPG is more RPG than espionage by genre conventions. Abilities don't stem from gritty spy thrillers, but role-playing games that are ordinarily set in worlds far removed from our own. Tints, effects, and abilities are easier to believe in a fantasy where literal magic exists, or a future where scientific hypotheticals are made real. Adam Jensen resists damage because he has a neodymium skin underlay matrix built of nanomachine rare earth magnets and powered with hook-ins to a biocell electrical system.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Thornton resists damage because he's blue. Now here's the thing. While that might have stood out in a polished and realistic looking world, the bland environment's enemy AI and sheer number of inconsistencies make it all blend together on normal. Outside of dialogue sequences, there's a lot to put up with in this game, and what saves it is that all of this is funny. Really funny.
It is really funny. the way these people die and the way what's his name again? Michael Thornton powers up. Oh my gosh.
Downright hilarious. On normal. But for this video's second playthrough, fourth in my total history with this game, I didn't just pick hard mode. I selected
Recruit on hard with pistols and SMGs.
Hey, Angry Joe. Man, he was young back here. Yeah, 2006, right? No, 9, 10? 2010, yeah. Oh, wow.
We've established this game's entertainment in action stems from its woeful construction. But I realize the real enjoyment of AI controls and levels breaking is that it never impacts the player's progress. Every stage is a laugh-along riot regardless of the player's loadout, skills, and equipment due to the game's lack of any challenge, authentic or bullshit. But when all of the things mentioned, bipolar enemies, busted camera, cliched and questionable design, are combined with high damage, high health enemies and low health, low damage Thornton, challenge only comes in forms of bullshit. My intention was to do 3 playthroughs. First, a purely instinctive experience, making choices on the fly with no greater plan, earning some friends and some enemies with proud and petty actions that naturally occurred. Second, the Leon Kennedy playthrough, a Boy Scout rookie that gives everyone a chance with no innocents killed and every woman wanting to get in bed. And the third, a veteran that pisses everyone off. But it just so happened to be my recruit run was on hard and forced into stealth by protocol of not killing people. And it's here where I learned, truthfully, how broken this game is. The tranq gun from Agent Under Fire only appears in the tutorial, so to do non-lethal runs, you acquire tranquilizer ammo for pistols. It's expensive, it means for the first few hours you can't just MGS2 your way through, which on paper I actually like. Even in practice, while taking issue with the game's overall balance, I genuinely enjoyed needing to be selective with Michael's cash between missions. From the opening in Saudi Arabia to main hubs, you not only select what levels to partake in, but also roleplay via email and both purchase, manage, and sell equipment. What's really cool though is being able to buy intel, granting bonuses such as weapon drops, disabled security cameras, or character dossiers, sometimes opening extra dialogue options. Though this is somewhat neutered on normal, where cash is so frequent and gameplay is so easy that upgrades, equipment, weapon drops aren't really necessary. That changes on hard, where every little bit helps, but you've only got the cash to choose between ammo, intel, and upgrades. An intriguing conundrum. It gave fond memories of Thief 1 and 2's incorporation of limited resources that went so far as to reinforce the protagonist's life. But that's one pearl in a sea of phlegm. In stealth games, there's a brief window when enemies spot you and react accordingly. It varies from game to game, but almost always gives the player enough time to react themselves. Whether it's accomplished by animation, voice, or an exclamation point, they all inform you've been spotted and must fight or flee. In Alpha Protocol, that reaction window doesn't exist by default. You must unlock it in the skill tree as a passive ability. But evasion, as it's called, isn't actually that mechanic. It doesn't delay enemy reactions, it makes you literally invisible to them. Okay,
Oh, so that's the invisibility that we keep seeing. Okay.
that's silly, but so what? That means an equivalent of this established mechanic exists, and it's easily unlockable in the skill tree. What's the issue? Well, it has a cooldown period of 5 minutes. For reference, some levels in this game are shorter than that. So once you've slipped by a single door with this passive, that's it. Rest of the time is spent with instant detection. To survive then, you rely on tranq rounds. Typically, with non-lethal weaponry in games, tranquilized enemies react but are dazed and confused before collapsing. And even if they don't fall instantly, the most dangerous phase entered before outright detection is caution, as no one has been killed yet. In Alpha Protocol, enemies hit by tranquilizers react the same as lethal rounds, before ragdolling like they've been shot by lethal rounds.
Wow. I'm just reminding myself of DSX, Mankind Divided, when Adam Jansen uses his tranquilizer gun on opponents. You'd hear them moaning and just wailing around, just going, then they fall on the floor, but they're still going, and it's so irritating sometimes, just hearing them do all of that action, like, just keep quiet, just fall asleep. So at least here with Alpha Protocol, one shot, you're dead, you're out of commission, you're already asleep. So I kind of like that, yeah.
And it doesn't come from being in front of them. Never mind if in their line of sight I would have been spotted before shooting. The same applies to enemies with their backs turned. Sometimes the gap between an enemy being hit by a tranquilizer and shooting back on target is 13 frames.
Whoa, did you see that? He's already aiming the gun at you. That's amazing. That's scary too, though. That looks very weird, but funny and amazing.
200 milliseconds, 1/10 slower than the average human eyeball blinks. Other times, they don't respond at all, effectively turning each encounter into a survival slot machine. Oh, what are we gonna get? What do we get? Let's see. Oh, come on. Ah, shucks. One hyper-aware enemy. Even the cover system, the very thing this engine was known for during the year Obsidian bought it, is fundamentally broken. In Gears of War, entering cover is determined by where your character's facing, and intuitively this is attached to the camera, so rarely does the character look in a direction separate from your own. That rarity is the norm in Alpha Protocol. Michael Thornton snaps in any direction instantaneously and independently of your camera. Now, I'm hardly the biggest fan of wait in video games. Historically, I prefer faster games to slower ones, but there does need to be some wait in order for a character to feel present in the world. Then again, Michael is a ghost. Naturally, this snapping creates issues because the game's very picky about how forward-facing you must be in order to enter cover. Combined with low magnetism and rapid inputs canceling each other out, death by an inability to enter cover is common, and remarkably, the opposite's common too. Enemies spam grenades like there's no tomorrow, likely stemming from only having one aggressive tactic to flush you out of cover. A bull charge where they melee and then shotgun, because apparently...
A bull charge with someone who's carrying a gun? Okay. Maybe they also have bulletproof armor around them, just like, what's his name again? Michael Thornton, yeah.
Apparently the thing to take from Gears of War wasn't the industry-defining cover system, but the two-piece from multiplayer.
Like, you slut among men.
Now, avoiding grenades is easy, sprint from cover. Except because of how buggy this game is with its own inputs, it can interpret your running as taking cover from the wall you just left. Reiterating the point this game's glitches and design work in tandem, its own weapon handling discourages the use of cover. Weapons don't collide with the environment, meaning enemies are more likely to hit you when you're using the mechanic as opposed to manually positioning yourself behind a wall. The exception to this is an ability with the pistol's skill tree that earns you critical shots, the red crosshairs ensuring high damage and accuracy, while blind firing. So you take cover and blind fire to increase your chance of hitting targets.
Wow.
Even the button layout isn't exempt from criticism, because despite the player being completely independent, you can only select one ability at a time, due to the clutter of gadgets and ammo types taking up separate menus, as well as there being buttons for recentering the camera and service records. As if the former needed to exist in a game from 2009, and the latter would be out of place on the start menu. Obviously, the team hadn't taken note from Rainbow Six Vegas's Y menu. The camera's too close when running, aiming turrets feels like Stadia, enemies snap from ass to assassin, and you must successfully minigame every single door, crate, and lock in existence or the entire base is alerted to your presence. What makes Alpha Protocol so unique in its inadequacies is their own inconsistencies. Cover implores you to face forward, except when it doesn't. Enemies can't spot you from range, except when they can. Takedowns don't work in combat, except when they do. Grenades explode, except when they don't.
That's also believable. That's also believable. Sometimes the grenade that you've activated and thrown at the enemy might not explode. That happens. That actually happens. So that's actually believable. I will accept that one. But seriously, I think the game developers needed to make a lot of patches for this game. A lot to fix up all of these issues. A lot of patches are required.
You can't formulate a strategy to navigate past these issues because no matter what's done, the opposite of your intentions will occur. On normal, it's funny. On hard, it's torture. The cover system isn't the most basic thing that's busted. That would be the aiming, specifically when using chain shot. If entered behind cover without holding the left trigger, your sensitivity is locked to that of non-aiming mode while aiming, making headshots the reason to use the ability akin to max DPI on Counter-Strike or Spec Ops multiplayer. I played through the entire game like this, and I can't even say it was a waste because it is responsible for opening my eyes to how truly defective this stealth and shooting is. And nowhere is that more obvious than Darcy's boss fight. Firstly, it's the area that showcased the cover system's faults earlier, but it's also generally lacking in cover against the boss who wields a two-shot sniper rifle with respawning baddies and all the frustrations that entails. Even his laser sight can't be trusted, inflicting damage while it's off target. But apparently that's not enough, so Obsidian decided to have Darcy throw multiple grenades simultaneously, twice the—
Man, is this guy like a super villain or what? Wow. Multiple grenades, the sniper gun fires 2 shots, the laser pointer for the sniper gun, doesn't necessarily mean it's targeting you. It could be targeting something else, but then the bullets will find you. This is funny. This is actually funny.
distance of your pistol's accuracy range with no cooldown period. You can't even exploit the game with Darcy's grenades landing on himself because he's also invulnerable to all explosives. Now, I do understand the parameters set for this second playthrough were just as responsible for the challenge as selecting hard mode, with recruit stats and specializations in pistols and SMGs. While opening stages aren't the most difficult, you certainly become appreciative of abilities that take the edge off of your mistakes later on. But I don't get the sense they were truly intended for hard mode. Chain shot is meant to be this game's mark and execute. But on hard, your pistols don't one-shot most enemies, only the most basic thugs encountered in the 3 regions. So then the ability isn't used to clear rooms but to hit targets that exceed your pistol's laughable range, which itself has such a violent cutoff your critical shots can be dependent on enemy animations. A tilt of the body can be the difference between 2 shots or 2 magazines. I even came to find that your sideways gangsta SMGs were more effective at long range than the pistol. That is, if you trigger finger. Outside of that, even the Bullet Storm ability, briefly granting an endless magazine for SMGs, isn't enough to kill basic enemies at point-blank range.
Wow, and this is on the hardest difficulty, right?
The only solution is to play conservatively, a playstyle which doesn't align with most abilities in this game. Iron Will, Fury, Brilliance, Bulletstorm, Focused Aim, Room Sweep, and Overclock encourage aggression to make the most of their attributes, buffing the player's health, ammo, and cooldown timers that aren't taken advantage of when cowering behind a wall with Uzis. I'm not one to tell people how to play their video games, but trust me on this. Hard mode and these parameters are not worth the effort. The only thing they accomplish is robbing you of entertainment found on normal, and spend more time in everything this game fails rather than succeeds.
The good. Okay. So we had the bad. This is the good. Are we also going to have the ugly?
A memory I have of Alpha Protocol was my second playthrough years ago, where upon completing all missions in Taipei, I shelved the game, coming back a month later to be completely lost in Rome. Having lost track of G22, VCI, Omar, Omen, Ronald, Conrad, CSP, NSB, Shahid, Albatross, Heck, Madison, Darcy, Scarlet, which is odd,
It's a lot of people.
because other RPGs have way more characters, yet
But it seems like this one has a lot of characters too. So yeah, okay.
no amount of time away made me ask, what does Commander Shepard need to do? Even the espionage works that inspired Alpha Protocol are relatively easy to follow. There's twists and turns, but generally you know who's bad and who's less bad. As much as I love Casino Royale for bringing Bond down to earth while retaining the franchise's cinematic qualities, Le Chiffre, Mr. White, and Quantum are still overtly villainous. While Alpha Protocol lets you potentially side with the leader of a Middle Eastern terrorist cell claiming responsibility for attacks not unlike those that have devastated people in the real world. This isn't just one of the most morally gray plot lines for an RPG or even a video game, but one of the most morally murky stories, period. You can earn a respectful reputation by the very people you're supposed to stop. Characters can be boss fights one moment and allies the next. Only one love interest doesn't have blood on their hands, and only because the player does on their behalf. In that particular instance, Michael is even scorned by other characters, ones who are otherwise opposites in ideology. This is when you're in Rome, encountering one of the most important plot points involving Madison St. James, a young woman employed by the Veteran Combat Initiative.
Madison St. James. Okay. Write down her name.
The game's many private military corporations. The VCI's most prominent figure is Conrad Marburg, and after stumbling upon a file marking you for death, she selflessly warns you of this. Through various interactions, missions, and nights spent, the relationship between Michael and Madison can culminate into romance. But unlike most games with implied doings, this isn't where the relationship ends. Instead, Conrad captures Madison, forcing you to pick Mary Jane or the busload of school children. But unlike Hollywood, saving both is impossible. Should you save the former, this relationship doesn't continue. Madison leaves because Michael put the lives of others below her, forced to live with the guilt that over 20 people were killed in a terrorist attack because the man who could have saved them pursued her. That's when handlers Z and Mina, women with no respect for each other, both deride your actions.
You let a museum full of people die in an explosion, just to rescue one person.
There's no saving the day getting the girl without consequence, and it's completely believable.
That's good. That's good.
One of the many troubles with storytelling in games is attaching player actions to reward systems and plot progression can create conflicts of interest. When the player is investing hours into something, it's seen as a designer's job to reward their investment. But in a story, things aren't that simple. Madison is a love interest and requires commitment from the player to romance. Traditional game design dictates that this should pay off in something, but narratively, there's no reason for the player to be rewarded. Conrad has no incentive to keep her alive, that he's aware of, and Madison, being established as a selfless individual, would be the first person to object Michael's savior complex, and the game is better for it. It's these subversions of traditional game design that help make Alpha Protocol unique, and its story every bit as immersive as the gameplay isn't. And the immersion continues in places you'd least expect. Games have glossaries, codexes, and Alpha Protocol has dossiers. Heaps of text on the people, corporation, and factions met along the way.
Does do the dossiers also have like a voiceover where someone would actually read it out for you, like in Mass Effect? Because that's very important. You know, if you're too tired or you're lazy to read, then at least there's a voiceover that will talk for you. And then, yeah, you just have to listen and it's done. Voila. So hopefully they've added that in.
Ordinarily written to fixate on lore or answer a particular question. In most games, information is a collectible, but Alpha Protocol goes one step further. Not only does the information gathered expand your knowledge of the game's world, but also Thornton's.
I've read your dossier.
Purchasing and collecting information does open dialogue options as mentioned, but it can open entire scenes, like Madison telling you her father's name is Alan Parker, the man who happens to be Alpha Protocol's analyst, and the man who orchestrated all of the game's major terrorist attacks, including Rome. Having not known his daughter got dragged into the scenario he created, telling Parker this shakes him enough to confront Conrad, getting Parker killed and initiating a boss fight that's only one of 2 ways to kill Conrad.
Oh my gosh, did you see the way that guy just fell to the floor like that? Oh wow. Yes.
This is uncanny. To think years ago I criticized Mass Effect 2 for its inability to maintain consistent world logic in the suicide mission.
What? No man, the suicide mission was perfect. Any action that you decided upon had consequences. Before you even went onto that mission, you had to prepare your ship, you had to make sure you had the armor, the shields, the weapons, and that's very important because if you don't prepare for that, people die. The selection of characters that you'd use on the final mission, whether they had to hack into the collector's systems or lead the second fire team. All of these decisions were very important and they had consequences should you have chosen people who are not really competent for that particular role, So I think it was good. Every action has a consequence. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the game completed just prior has an endgame reacting to no less than 3 previous hubs, unlocks various plot revelations by player action, and varies boss fights accordingly. All playable with 3 different handlers is astonishing. There's so many ways to experience a conclusion of this game that keeping track of scenes, perks, bosses, dialogue, and variables based on reputation with other characters makes me feel like I took a bullet to the head. Which I wasn't alone in, because even the game itself falls under this weight. In the second playthrough, I rescued both Mina and Scarlet, 2 major characters that Michael can team up with during the finale, communicating and coordinating an escape off the mysterious island Alpha Protocol's main facility is located on. Only the game didn't account for that possibility and decided Michael's going to romantically sail off into the sunset with Mina. I guess Scarlet found a jet ski. But frankly, I don't hold much against Obsidian for failing to account for 100% of the player's actions in their finale, because they do a remarkable job for 95% of them. Every player might visit Thailand, Italy, Russia, and the island, but the amount of ways a player can travel through them is staggering, and it's all accomplished by maximizing the resources Obsidian had. All RPGs feature an illusion of choice, regardless if you're good or evil, romantic or stoic, a psycho or a pacifist. Most major plot points are set in stone. What makes someone resonate with an RPG then is more often based on emotional context rather than plot deviations. When landing on Tuchanka in Mass Effect 2, interactions with Urdnot Reeve are dry and uneventful, like a business meeting.
Yeah, because he doesn't really know you. But if it's Rex, he will immediately come up towards you and start greeting you, and you feel that nostalgia about it because you remember him from Mass Effect 1. You have that relationship, you have that that brotherhood, if I can say it like that, from Mass Effect 1, and they've continued that type of interaction with all the 3 games, all the way from Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. Wherever you would meet your former crew members, you'd always have a talk with them, you'll have this emotional time with them, and even in the DLCs for Mass Effect 3, what was it called again? The Citadel DLC, where all of those members from all 3 games would attend to your apartment, and you would have parties with them and you would talk with them, and you'll just have this feeling of home. You're around family members, you're around your best friends, those that were with you into hell and back, like Garrus. Also, he's been there since number 1, since Mass Effect 1. And these types of relationships are what make that game so enjoyable to play. Very, very enjoyable to play. So yeah.
Whereas the same scene with Urdnot Rex becomes a brotherly reunion, with more humor to boot. Alpha Protocol follows this principle. When landing on the yacht in Russia, you'll be meeting G-22, a direct rival to the VCI mentioned earlier, using stealth and advanced gadgets compared to the VCI's brutal tactics. In this context, the mission is one of complete mystery, as is the boss fight against a new character simply named Sis. However, if you've already interacted with G-22 in Taipei and its leader Albatross, then the mystery changes from who are these guys to what are they doing here, and how does Sis connect to Albatross. However, what this game does that you don't normally see is sprinkle these variations so frequently and subtly, you might not even know they're happening. Where games overtly signal a character's story quest, plot security, or conclusion, Obsidian put them in side missions, handlers, dialogue options, even responses from other characters. Henry Leyland, CEO of weapons manufacturer Halbeck and the game's antagonist, embodies this.
Spare me your lectures, Thornton. You're a civil servant, while I run a multinational company. Your evaluations of world events... Please. Those Marines you killed in Moscow. No American agent gets away with that in the end. You're not pretending to be a rogue agent anymore. You are one. They'll execute you. Me, I have a different perspective on the situation.
The scenes with Leyland may repeat, but everything said relates to your actions, which brings us to Michael Thornton himself. I've said publicly that Michael comes across as inconsistent,
Hey, Mandalore Gaming.
primarily in delivery. Obsidian have a strong reputation for memorable dialogue and character interactions, which is on display here, to the point where you'll be laughing on the floor or stopping your jaw from landing on it at times. It just seemed more inconsistent than what I remember of KOTOR 2. Granted, that game had a silent protagonist, whereas Thornton's voice actor needs to juggle between the three agent archetypes. Generally, aggression and professional, while dry sometimes, are consistent. It's rare to select these and be surprised by what leaves Thornton's mouth. Suave, on the other hand.
Here's my contact info. Call me sometime. Hey, I might even pick up. As for the women, I've already met you. I can strike that one off the list.
Charming. Let me know if you do anything scandalous.
Will do.
It's supposed
Stop right now. Stop.
supposedly modeled after James Bond, but it's often a tween who thinks they're James Bond. There's plenty of great lines in this tone, as you'll soon see, but unlike aggression and professional, suave is like a tumble dryer. You don't know if you're going to get something witty, charming, or just weird, and the inconsistency extends to emails. Between missions, Thornton can receive messages from various characters met along the way, but can also respond with the same dialogue system as conversations. It's oddly one of the most compelling aspects of the game, as not only do they create a further connection with Thornton himself and other characters, it can give you experience, credits, and reputation with said characters. This easily could have been something to fall on the chopping block during crunch, but I'm glad it didn't, and rather wish more RPGs had little interactions like this, especially as it specifically requires time to create rather than resources due to the lack of visuals and voice actors. It's something theoretically anybody could do. Some of the most memorable lines aren't spoken but read in these emails, though some of these emails are just weird. Though, Michael's not a definitively likable character by design.
Why are you wasting my...
Isn't it by choice that your character doesn't have to be this goody-goody two-shoes, honorable gentleman? Yeah, I think it's like by choice, right?
time?
The player actually has the option to be the dick or be the hero, be completely in the gray. He can be a chauvinist, he can be a misogynist, he can be a ladies' man.
I think my gun is working just fine.
Not according to the tests we ran while you were under.
Did you actually say that?
He can murder innocents, treat everyone, and I mean everyone, like garbage, and dialogue options border on the psychotic.
You can't bait me, Thornton.
Good, because I enjoyed putting a bullet through that bitch's skull while she was lying helpless on the deck of that yacht. Hell, I'd do it again. I still have a memento, her little necklace. I kept it as a trophy of the kill. Still has some of her blood on it.
I will
Who talks like this? Wow.
find you, Thornton.
The more I selected options that didn't align with my original runs, the more this character fascinated me. Because not only is Michael properly threatening, the game allows him to be the villain without a meter determining so. I always used to question why the game doesn't give more credibility to the claim that Leyland is going to cause World War III in pursuit of a Cold War for profits. It's not an impossible premise, the game just doesn't establish it as much as you'd think. This isn't Black Ops where the big baddies describe their plan in detail, characters just say World War III is going to happen. But there might be a reason for that. It explained why Thornton could feel compelled to take over Halbeck for himself. Most protagonists in games have one or two destinations, typically one of two extremes. But Thornton? He's a character with many motivations. Whether patriotic, vengeful, or a cowboy, Thornton's journey challenges and changes him as much as the player allows.
When he asked you why you volunteered for Alpha Protocol, do you remember what you told him?
I think I said it was my duty to volunteer. It sure feels that way now. You ever had an intern position at a government agency?
I have.
Need I say more? All my exercise was moving papers from desk to desk. I'm here to do work, not sit back and manage it. I want to be out where the action is. I want to make a difference.
He has video evidence disproving your assertion.
Well, that didn't turn out like you thought.
Michael isn't set to destroy, save, or conquer the world. He's defined by you, separating it from even some of the most critically acclaimed games in this genre. What Alpha Protocol shares with them is great characters. In fact, I'd go so far to say Alpha Protocol has one of the most underrated casts in gaming.
Bitch, are you for real?
There's no bald rulers petting white cats or henchmen with bladed top hats, but there
is nothing wrong with that, is there? That's cool though still.
Is a coked up Russian rocking leopard skin suits to autographs turn up the radio during
okay, yeah, that's also cool, I guess.
During a boss fight.
Let's see how funny you are when I cut out your tongue, buddy.
Big talk for someone dressed like a seat cover.
He's
Yo, Michael. If Michael said that to me, I'd be like, you know what? Just I give up. Okay, let me just drop my guns. You can arrest me. I'm finished. Wow, seat cover. And it actually kind of does look like it, you know, with the tiger print. Oh my god.
Exactly the one-note baddie you'd expect in a game like this. Someone so over the top their clothing, weapon choice, living quarters, and language, there's no possible way there's more to this Constantine Braco. And there isn't, if you shut him up. Keep talking and he reveals that a rival, ex-KGB agent Surkov, wasn't honest about why Braco stole from him. And just as with the revelation of Madison's family leading to unique scenes in gameplay, extracting information from Braco spawns an entire level. One where keeping him alive to talk to Surkov circumvents another boss fight with an Olympian turned bodyguard.
This is interesting. This is very interesting. How things evolve this way. With the choices that you make, you know, you're not killing this particular person, therefore a new branch to the game is now opening up. That's cool. That's actually very cool. And you're actually playing it. You're not going to have like an end result that tells you because you've saved this person's life, this has now happened, and you know you're not having any contribution to that new possibility. But with this game here, you know, if you save someone's life or if you kill this particular person, a new branch is opened and you have to now go through it as well. You know, so yeah, that's cool. That's actually kind of cool.
And Braco's hardly the only character capable of turning enemy to ally.
They must have moved the drop.
Mina?
Portable radio jammer. Very useful. Looks like you came prepared for anything, Agent Thornton. Not sure what to expect from me? Trying to blend in with the locals, Agent Thornton? Good fieldcraft. Points for considering camouflage, Agent Thornton. But try something that blends in with the civilians more than the surroundings.
How do you know who I am?
It's characters like these, Omen Dang, boogeyman of the intelligence community, that are my personal highlight, and are far more suited to the spy genre. One who's cold and calculated in movement, expression, and voice, one of the Chinese secret police's highest-ranking members. One with all the characteristics of the hitman you're searching for is in fact a loyal, devoted, and committed agent for Taiwan. The actual assassin is instead love interest and photojournalist Scarlet Lake, another who intrigues on the surface of being a professional, yet tags along for adventure, and despite murdering for money, can care for people like Thornton. Seemingly. Depending on the player's actions, she can ride off into the sunset or shoot you in the back. By creating this world where everyone is withholding secrets, ones that relate to other characters, countries, and coalitions, Obsidian have made story segments mechanically enjoyable, not just fascinating to hear. That's actually why I didn't label these sections gameplay and story like I normally do. Obsidian's own testers were as, if not more, invested in these conversations than combat, and so was I. It's fun to aggressively contest a mercenary cougar like Z, gain respect for initiating a boss fight, and have her become one of your mission handlers. What's better is that you can do all of that and the game still isn't rigid about your working relationship. Regardless of how much you two have done or what your reputation is, killing her is an option during Braco's mansion invasion, and though unlikely to select if you're working with her, by giving players the choice, it reaffirms their actions, like a role-playing game should.
Yeah, that's good. That's very, very good. Just like with the previous, the Russian guy who's wearing, tiger print clothing that looks like a seat cover. If you save his life, a new branch to the game is opened to you, and you're able to go through that, timeline or progression in the game. And yeah, I like that. I really do like that. You have more control over your actions and the consequences for your actions as well. Yeah.
Fighting alongside a character means more when you're aware that other options were on the table. Even the conversations themselves have a flow I've not seen replicated in this genre, and some linear greats outside of it. RPGs have always had an unavoidable awkwardness with pause breaks, silent leads, blank expressions, or all three. That's just something we accept as players, in the same way we accept the significance of cutscene bullets compared to gameplay. As exquisite as The Witcher 3's presentation is, it often still feels like what designers label an interrogation, wiping the color off every option until they're grayed out. Here, there are no loops, exhausted NPCs, restrictions, or repeated introductions. The dialogue's not just well written and engaging, so is the manner in which it's selected.
At least with the goods of this game, it does sound very enjoyable. It sounds like something that I would want to play, actually, in terms of the dialogue, in terms of the discussions between you as the character and, all these other characters in the game. Yeah, it really does sound like something that I would enjoy to play, just to listen, to understand their point of view on why they're doing these certain things. And, that's basically what I'm here for in terms of a game. I'm here for the storyline. I'm here for, how things have turned this way and how are they going to be changed with my contribution into the storyline. I'm not someone who just likes shooting at things and running around and shoot here, shoot there, shoot here, and then you're done with the game. I'm not really into stuff like that. I'm here, primarily for the storyline. So if they could give me that, then definitely I would enjoy playing this game. Yeah.
Working in tandem to hook the player. Each conversation left me wanting more, enhanced by everyone having secrets you want to get to the bottom of, supported by excellent voice acting across the board.
Did you know at 400 miles an hour, soccer balls can decapitate people?
I don't want to discuss the details over the phone. This line may be tapped. She's a sharp one.
Sounds like someone with a code of ethics.
Do you even know what a code of ethics is?
It's all relative.
If you want me to be quiet, then I'm afraid you will have to choke me after you tie me up.
Ever hear of anger management?
No, because I killed all my therapists.
In less than a day's time, you have already managed to cause me considerable inconvenience. Now, tell me what you're doing here.
Look, old man, you can talk big all you want, but at the end of the day, you're a corporate drone collecting a paycheck. You answer to a cardboard cutout half your age with the fashion sense of a screaming child. He spends thousands on his fucking hair.
Conrad Marburg here, one of my favorites, is like Agent 47 grew old with insecurities, and though he's often trying to kill me, regardless if I'm respected or not, in each conversation I want to get to the bottom of his poor judgment of character or hatred between him and Z that's so strong, meeting her in Russia gives a positive point before you've selected anything, if you fought Conrad in Rome.
I think we will be fast friends, darling. Conrad and I, well, we have our professional differences.
I smiled so much upon catching Surkov or Omen's line about meeting in combat gear, reloading the stage in casual, and being complimented, or submitting this to Mina after she asked about something on site, to which she sends you a Swiss bank account of $25,000 as a bribe to stop emailing jokes. This is the heart of Alpha Protocol, the real gameplay. This is why the longer you spend in combat, i.e. hard mode, the less engaging the game is. You're kept away from the game's real superpower. For as many choices as this game has, and it does, at the end of the day, it's still an illusion. You're going through the same 5 locations that culminate to the same island. Truthfully, there's less content here in quantity than most RPGs, which, considering there were still talks of cutting a whole hub, is a definite consequence of its development. You visit many more locations and people in other games. You probably make more decisions in total. The reason Alpha Protocol feels so unique then isn't because of your choices, it's how the game acknowledges them. The dialogue, mission order, relationships, clothing are in service to this, and that's what these notifications are for. Though a dialogue choice may not always result in a notably shifted narrative, you receive immediate feedback in every conversation with just this mechanic, and it works alongside everything else mentioned, including one final design. Certain repetitions, actions, choices, and relationships net you perks. Literally, you gain 15 plus endurance if Albatross hates you. Texting 5 times gives you bonus XP. Turning all potential enemies into allies gives you 25 skill points. Fueling a friend's conspiracy theories improves cooldowns. It's endless.
That is good. I like that, actually. I really do.
However, I'd be dishonest to say Alpha Protocol wasn't lauded purely because of poor gameplay. While more popular and polished RPGs might lack a protagonist that blurs the line between avatar and character, they do a far better job of presenting. Despite the sheer volume of content in RPGs, the best manage to feature powerful imagery and music which serve to amplify any emotion. You don't just...
True. Like, it's a signature to any type of game, not just RPG games. Any game that has a soundtrack that makes you feel as if you're in this game, you know, or makes you remember this game that you've played before. Like, for instance, with Mass Effect, you know, the main soundtrack, the main original soundtrack for the Suicide Mission, that I'll remember that soundtrack for the rest of my life. You know, the tune, the drums, the beats, everything about it was so epic, was so amazing. You know, and even with the final mission, you know, as Shepard is running away from the collectors, you know, going towards his ship, and you know, you would hear Sovereign talk through the collector boss. I'm not sure what that main boss character was again, but yeah, you know, you'd hear Sovereign talking through it, saying, you know, that which you call the Reapers are your salvation through destruction, you know, and then you'd hear the action music, and then you'd see Shepard running towards the Normandy, and then the music would just slow down a bit until he, you know, gets on board the Normandy and they escape from the collector home base. And, you know, the music would return and it would be so epic and so amazing. You know, it was just a beautiful signature send-off for the game there, and really it was a good, memorable soundtrack from beginning to end. And that's what makes a game, you know, not just the storylines, not just the graphics, not just sorry about that not just any of that stuff, but also the soundtracks. You know, if you can nail it with the soundtracks, I can assure you people will remember, you know, playing this particular game for a very long time. So yeah.
Talk to the elusive man, you feel his presence. The dark lighting, barren quarters, and exploding star bathes this leader in mystery. The camera's frequently angled upward even when he's seated, suggesting power. And Jack Wall is telling you his story.
Good times, good times.
The theme's calm, collected, and yet desperate. Everything the elusive man is. What story does this music tell?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure. You know, I don't think I'll. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
That wasn't a rhetorical question. And the scene itself doesn't draw the eye. Lighting's as flat as the textures, camera angles rarely deviate from shot-reverse shot, TVs are purely an expositional tool, transitions exclusively fade to white. There's neither style nor substance. Once again, likely spawned from 4 years of searching for Alpha Protocol's core appeal, rather than building upon it from day one. Some may pin lacking cinematics on the notably lackluster visuals, but I disagree. Saints Row 2 looked abysmal in 2008, yet its stylized cutscenes hold up today, whether comedic or profound. Though they didn't share Alpha Protocol's technical issues that arise in cutscenes more ambitious than dialogue sequences, which could explain the game's restrained capability.
The security guards are in T-pose, just moving towards the person who was assassinated. That was funny.
TV feel. If this storyboard is anything to judge, the game intended to feature far more creative angles, transitions, and framing. Now, Obsidian did wisely invest in higher quality models and facial animations, which deserves credit. There's tons of subtlety that's impressive for a game with the amount of cinematic content this one has. It's the bright spot in an otherwise dated-looking game that, sadly, no amount of texture mods could save. For music, Deus Ex composer Alexander Brandon came to Obsidian, repeating his work from Iron Storm Austin, building an audio department from the ground up to direct himself. When it came time to work on Alpha Protocol, one of the top influences and discussions was famed electronica producer BT, that as luck would have it, wrote the game's main theme. For lead composer, Alexander spoke with Jeff Zanelli from Radar Group, who'd done cues for Pirates of the Caribbean, but through contractual issues couldn't come onto the project, leaving the reins to those who supplied the demo for that costly airplane scene, Red Note Audio's Jason Graves and Rob Abernethy, both being people that Alexander worked with previously, and the former known today mostly for Dead Space and Tomb Raider. That's quite the talent roster, and digging through files, certain tracks match their potential.
I don't know why, but this reminds me of Yu-Gi-Oh! the opening music for Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't know why, but it's taking me back there, you know? Yeah.
However, these are songs from the game's official soundtrack release, which is not what most games actually use. In reality, raw game soundtracks look like this, isolated pieces that are put together by programmers. It's why talking about a soundtrack's composition and implementation is so important, because while Alpha Protocol in truth has some expertly crafted music, you don't hear it most of the time as a player.
Seriously, the killing mechanics here with the enemy, like it's so weird, really. It's so funny. Oh gosh.
It's said by legends like John Williams that melody is the greatest challenge of composing, and as a result, takes time. So I suspect Alpha Protocol's frequent background noise is yet another victim to its troubled development. It wasn't surprising to read that the audio team shifted, with Alexander Brandon moving to Austin a year and a half before release. And speaking of trouble, there's the story.
You know that extremely brief summary I gave about 5 paragraphs ago? That's literally the extent of the plot I understood. The rest was an incomprehensible miasma of factions, motivations, and betrayals through which I was just dumbly acting with zero understanding.
This is a problem, and one I relate to, having mentioned being completely lost when I had the sheer audacity to not binge the game in a weekend. If there's anything for RPGs to standardize, it's chapter summaries. A feature Alpha Protocol desperately needs, though if it did, might have revealed what I came to understand. That being, the story isn't nearly as complicated as the number of events, people, organizations, and nations are involved would suggest. This game's story is merely about a PMC using a top-secret military branch of the US government to construct terrorist attacks that escalate the world's weapon supply and company profits. The setup is Michael Thornton's the agent chosen by Halbeck for one of their schemes in the Middle East, only the agent survives and starts infringing upon other operations. And this is actually another reason why cutting one location was considered. The story's culmination comes independently of the number of locations. The story's funnel point is that no matter what you've done, Halbeck believes they're in a good position, no longer needing Alpha Protocol, and as the government branch is established to be under their own nation's radar and rebooted under different aliases multiple times, this is routine. Despite themes of global espionage, the game's not nearly as political as one would expect. There's a plethora of political scenarios: presidential assassinations, mass weapons sales, rogue agencies, terrorist cells, riots, etc. But because no matter their conclusion, the final mission's plot parameters remain the same, there's not really any statement or points raised. This isn't a criticism. It's just surprising that the game taking place in a world much like our own has less to say about it than the fantasy, sci-fi, and post-apocalyptic games populating the genre. And it's also fair to note that while I love the cast of characters and the game does an excellent job giving context, choice, and consequence to them, not everybody's fleshed out. Mina Tang has one of the most intriguing conclusions regardless of whether she fell for Michael or she views him as the devil's work. Similar to how Parker was actually the mind behind each terrorist attack, Mina only saved you for her own assigned mission, infiltrating Alpha Protocol from the inside. This is powerful because Mina has stuck by you through everything, whether it was done with jokes and loyalty or snark and sneers at your other allies.
She may know something that could help us.
Unless you need advice on implants, I wouldn't bother.
Like Obsidian's previous work, the explanation behind a character's role isn't just because that's their role and this is a video game. Mina has real motivations for sticking beside you that are completely of her own accord and unknown to us. Westridge on the
like how a spy should be, you know? Spies are not supposed to be telling you their whole truths. Spies are not supposed to be mainly on the front lines and bombing and destroying things and killing people. Spies are supposed to be, gathering information, making friends, and then eventually betray them at some point. And, just being someone who is incognito, really, and not someone who's just out here and using weapons and blowing up bases and killing a lot of people. Then you're just like a regular soldier or a special forces type of soldier, which I think I would make, what's his name again? Michael Thornton as, not really as a spy, but just as a special forces, character who has been brought into the spy world by mistake, and here he is. He's just doing what he knows best. And he succeeds in that. Yeah, he's not really a spy. Mina is the spy, really, definitely. Also Scarlet, I think she's also like a spy, really, or an assassin. Yeah.
On the other hand, you exchange words in the Middle East, never see each other for the whole runtime, and never will unless you kept the game's initial villain Shahid alive and get information from him, triggering Westridge to be the final boss. The final conversation makes some sense in the context of Thornton being a greedy bastard teaming up with Leyland, but even then, it's just unsatisfying for the game's final fight to so heavily rely on a character that you barely know. The plot is not this game's strength. While Michael's journey is far more reactive, engaging, and intense than your average RPG, its conclusion ultimately brings all paths to the same road. Well, ocean, and it's not very interesting. Just a sunset played to forgettable indie rock with a glitched background to remind you this is still Alpha Protocol.
Oh gosh, let's not be too hard on the game. Let's not be too hard on the game. You know, they're giving us a nice sunset, a boat ride. Yeah, it's nice.
But there is intrigue for the story beyond this game. G22 knows an awful lot about your ostensibly secret government program, and it's known that a previous iteration of Alpha Protocol was called G19. Remember how telling Alan Parker that Marburg killed his daughter results in the death of both? Well, Parker is the only person who's been with every version of Alpha Protocol, including
Deus Vult,
where Alan set up Conrad in Pakistan, just like he set up you in Saudi Arabia. It's why Marburg placed bombs in the museum's Crusades exhibit. The attack was both to terrify the EU and send a message to the American government branch that abandoned him. Telling Conrad that Parker was his handler results in him taking revenge. Even Mina Tang is infiltrating Alpha Protocol on behalf of another American agency. All fingers point to Alpha Protocol, not the agency, but the idea, a secret arm of the US government that's never held accountable, being something that's existed for decades, and no doubt Obsidian were going somewhere with all of these pieces. What it means then for Alpha Protocol itself is that it's a story of potential and instinct, but once the dust has settled, has less to ponder over than you'd assume ideologically or politically. But that doesn't mean the game's story doesn't have something special, because via its characters, dialogue, and reactivity to your biggest and smallest actions, it gives much to ponder over in its world.
And that's why I'm saying that maybe there should have been a Alpha Protocol Part 2, or maybe the second installment of the game, you know? So yeah, a lot of potential, just it's not fine-tuned, you know? It hasn't been hammered out of its chunks or its kinks wherever they may be. And I guess maybe even the Obsidian group or business, you know, they had too many goals and aspirations for this game, and it became too much for them to handle, really. Yeah, and Sega also was not hands-on approach in terms of helping Obsidian trying to realize their dream of this RPG espionage game. You know, they just kept on throwing money at them, saying, yeah, sure, we'll give you another 2, maybe 3 more years to complete the game. We'll give you more money as well. Just make sure that the game is ready. But yeah, it has potential. It really does.
If there's anybody who knows how much of a shambles Alpha Protocol is, it's Obsidian themselves. Upon the game's release, there was little in the way of defending from developer or publisher. A forum post even gained traction when someone claiming to have worked on the game wished it was canned, which, while having nothing to verify its accuracy, speaks volumes to the game's trouble that people could believe it.
Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad.
But rare is it that a project results in a total loss. The cancelled Aliens RPG did result in Obsidian's own game engine funded by Sega, and would go on to be used in both Dungeon Siege 3 and South Park: The Stick of Truth. And with Alpha Protocol's development, the team had a firm grasp on Unreal, action, stealth, and pre-production. Where Alpha Protocol 1 was pitched to Sega with an uncommonly brief document of narrative themes, Alpha Protocol 2 had a complete 40-page pitch, detailing the methods of polishing while doubling down on the game's biggest strength, reactivity. Chris Parker describes a choice and consequence web interface, presumably building on the summary screens from the original, that showed to players what their actions spiderweb from start to finish. There were even concepts for asynchronous multiplayer involving intelligence sharing, where players could send pieces of intel and even falsify them.
And this was going to be part of Alpha Protocol 2, right? Yeah, wow.
I'm picturing fibbage with firearms. It also aimed to ratchet up the crazy, make it more Kill Bill. Even the original game didn't include every character Obsidian dreamed up. The offices to this day have a full illustration of one of the cut characters, Uli Booley. Despite all the challenges faced during Alpha Protocol's development, or perhaps because of them, Obsidian were enthusiastic about a potential sequel, filled with ideas and plans to learn from their mistakes while not backing down from the company's known ambitions. However, even by July 2010, just 2 months after launch, the jig was up. The real tragedy is, were a few things to change, Obsidian would have retained rights to the Alpha Protocol IP and at least be able to pitch it elsewhere. It all goes back to the Dwarves RPG mentioned early on. Sega actually contacted Obsidian in 2005 when the developer was wrapping up Neverwinter Nights 2. CEO Fergus Urquhart explained their hands were currently tied, to which Sega surprisingly offered to wait them out and discuss ideas for an RPG franchise until the company could make it. This setup for negotiating a perfect deal, however, was interrupted by the sudden cancellation of Seven Dwarfs by Disney, leaving dozens of people out of work and an effectively completed contract on Obsidian's desk that immediately keep those people's jobs secure. Alpha Protocol's creators would have owned the intellectual property rights, but having to get things signed right away came with a price. Despite publicly claiming no interest in continuing the brand, Sega has held on to it since that contract. This moment is the reason why there's been no hope for a sequel. And
I mean, they spent a lot of money on this game. A lot. So I don't think they would want to just let it go just like that. Maybe they'll resurrect the franchise on a later date. Don't know when exactly, but yeah.
Hope sank even further last year when Alpha Protocol was removed from Steam due to expired music rights with no effort to renew them. It's such a shame, because I've held the belief for years that games which need sequels the most are the flawed gems. The ones who might have lacked in presentation, gameplay, or polish, but had something special. Alpha Protocol epitomizes this. 10 years after
a diamond in the rough,
playing hundreds of games with better action, fidelity, presentation, polish, style, and construction, I still think about Alpha Protocol. And now that I've spent so much time pondering over it, I think it'll only stick with me more. Everybody wants what they can't have, and I want everything just mentioned with the reactivity of Alpha Protocol. And while the chance of a sequel is thin, even in a world with Hitman 2, Rage 2, and Bloodlines 2, that Obsidian are still thinking about it themselves lets me hope one day, even spiritually, I'll get my wish. So, where the hell have I been? Mentally? Nowhere. And that was the problem. The month of June was spent with an utter vacancy, a mixture of emotions that couldn't decide between horror, pride, happiness, or sadness. Much like the world itself at the time, which is no coincidence. It's why I paused the Patreon for that month. Not only was I not doing any work, I wasn't doing anything to change it. But in the months to follow, I did. The primary one being my mistress to Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve. For those who didn't know, I switched editing software at the beginning of this year and came to realize the change in software and reduction in uploads was not a coincidence. The software was great during production, but when it came time to render, you'd get this. Youngblood doesn't have these staged. Indifferent.
Oh, that's bad. Now you have to restart all over again.
Different places every time, delaying videos by days and leaving me utterly drained on the moment that's most pleasing when uploading, seeing your responses and reactions. This marks the first project upon my return to Adobe Premiere, which wasn't easy, involving much troubleshooting, technical minefields, and testing. But unlike the last couple of projects, I've genuinely enjoyed making this one, which I hope came through. A large part of that enjoyment is thanks to Jack, or Stuffer, who stepped up to the plate producing all of the graphics for this video. Special thanks to him, and be sure to check out his website in the description. And to all of you who kept donating, watching, and commenting these past couple of months, thank you. Not only for pushing this channel to its biggest milestone yet, one I never would have believed reaching, but more importantly, keeping a roof over my head. It really means a lot. But that's enough of the serious stuff. It's time to get stupid. Do you even?
I'm literally can't even.
Is editing hell?
Yes!
Who is your favorite video game character and why is it Frank Hayden? Because he's voiced by Stephen Bloom and I bet he doesn't even remember doing it. Most copies you bought of a single game. Halo 3 probably. I had the collector's edition, but then the disc got banged up, and I bought a new one, which was then followed by Halo 3 ODST that has the same competitive multiplayer. Though I've got so many games, I've bought extra copies of them upon forgetting I already have them. This has resulted in 2 copies of Too Human, and from my understanding, 1 copy is already too many.
What a nice life. What a nice life. Wow. Wow.
When will Ray ask a question?
Never!
Do you put milk in your scrambled eggs? It depends.
Milk in the scrambled eggs? Not before? Like when it's still, liquid and then you put milk and then, you make it into scrambled eggs? So you make the scrambled eggs and then you put the milk inside the scrambled eggs? No. No.
Why do you use us for content during the credits instead of being entertaining enough to carry it yourself? Because I'm not. If you did it years later on a strategy game, would you make it a collaboration or avoid them entirely? My channel's output indicates I've gone with the latter, but if it were to happen, a collaboration would be likely, if only to be fair to the game. As being ignorant on the genre as a whole, it at least needs someone else who can call me out. Why does Red Bull suck? Monsters worse. Why are you stealing our fun? You already asked this.
Okay guys, that is it with Alpha Protocol 10 years later, Raycevick YouTube, on the Raycevick YouTube channel. Yeah, this game, it did have potential. It really did have potential. It's just that there were just too many issues that needed to be dealt with that were not dealt with, They weren't really ironed out. Like, what do we want to do? How do we want to do it? What is our goal? What is our objective? How far are we in finishing, all of our objectives and our goals? And how are we going to make sure that this game is going to be having a platform for a part 2 of the game, and then have Sega being interested in that part 2 as well. And yeah, I do like the aspects of the storylines and the characters, how you communicate with them, how they will communicate with you, and how you would gather up information, dossiers on these particular characters, how you'd use that information against people that you're interrogating. I do like that about the game, and I also like the storyline of the game is also quite interesting. I think I'll have to just read up on it on online first, because I do understand that there's a business that is in conjunction with the government of the United States of America. They want to create a third world war, and they would profit from this global war. I think that's how the main storyline of this game. And yeah, I find that quite interesting. I just need to read up more on it, with the different characters, the different antagonists and side characters, if I can say that as well. But the gaming mechanics, the way the AI operates in this game, it's so funny, it's so clanky. Even the death scenes of many of these NPCs and all these people, it's just so funny and weird, and really I would not be able to take this game seriously. On the missions, I just would not be able to take this game seriously. The way Michael Thornton also dies, in slow motion. That was so funny. That was really, really funny. And the options of, discussion or talking to other characters, that was very interesting. It reminds me of Mass Effect, in terms of the Paragon and the Renegade options, but this one is like cranked up by level 100 or something, in terms of what Michael Thornton is able to say and what he's able to do. Really, it's so radically different compared to what I've played before. So yeah, that would also be very enjoyable to experience. And I like also the fact that, the choices that you've made in terms of saving some people or killing other people, it does have it does bear a consequence further down the line. And it opens up new gaming avenues for you to play through, instead of just playing through the should I say the typical or the normal playthrough of the entire game. You'll be able to deviate and take a different path and complete the game in a different type of way. Of course, at the end of the game, you will still be on the boat, either with Mina or Scarlet, heading off into the sunset on a boat. Yeah, at least with that part of the story, it will still be the same, no matter what choices you make before the end of the game. So yeah, that's at least with that, what's going to happen in the end. But yeah, it was good. Really, it had potential. Really, it did really have potential. It was a diamond in the rough, but there was no one left to try and polish this diamond and have it being sold out to the public, and having the public enjoying this diamond, enjoying what it's able to offer, and then wanting more of it from the development companies like Obsidian and the publishing company like Sega, and yeah, maybe Sega one day they will reactivate this product, this game, and yeah, people will be able to play it. I don't know if they will continue with Alpha Protocol 2. Maybe they will reboot the entire game and say Alpha Protocol. I don't know what will be the sub name of it. But yeah, maybe they will reactivate this game one day. Yeah. Okay, guys, I guess that's it. Thank you to Samathon James and Michael James for requesting that I should react to this video. It's been really enjoyable. Guys, remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as Raycevick's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Okay? Bye-bye.